All right, here's one anchor team, I should say, we won't be seeing together anymore in this election cycle. MSNBC announcing this week that hosts Keith Olbermann and Chris Matthews have been bumped from the anchor desk when MSNBC covers presidential debates and other special events in the future. So, Jane, did that network make the right call in giving those two guys the boot?
I think it did, because they were taking a lot of heat. I understand that Tom Brokaw and Brian Williams and others at NBC were uncomfortable with the way that certainly Bill O'Reilly and other people were going after them night after night. I think legitimately about how can you have people who were trashing Bush then anchoring the Republican convention? You really can't. There are some lines that are still sacred, and that is still a sacred line they were crossing.
Cal?
I'm just amazed that it took them this long to wake up to an obvious fact. At least Olbermann has another job. He can be a football commentator at NBC along with those other guys.
Well, and after the tingle went up the leg of Chris Matthews when he heard the
thrill
Barack
up the
Obama
leg. Yeah.
Thrill up the leg.
Thrill up the leg.
I think what's interesting is Felix Gillette, who writes for the New York Observer, had a sort of behind-the-scenes take where he said, look, not only was it obvious on the air that Matthews and Olbermann had moved MSNBC way, and Rachel Maddow way to the left, but that people like Tom Brokaw, like Brian Williams, like Andrea Mitchell had been complaining internally to not only Phil Griffin at MSNBC, but also Steve Kappas, the head of NBC News, Jeff Zucker, the chairman of NBC Universal, and Jeff Immelt, who owns General Electric. All of them knew.
He runs it.
He runs the whole. He's an overall corporate czar, and they all knew about these complaints and were happy as long as they thought they were getting the ratings until the meltdowns at the conventions when they had to pull the plug. But in other words, this was a decision consciously made at the very highest levels of GE NBC.
But Kirsten, there were all kinds of liberal bloggers who said that Jeff Immelt and NBC and GE were caving in to the McCain campaign.
Well, God help us, if we listen to the liberal bloggers. But I think that they had a real serious credibility problem, and it was staining the reputations of some serious journalists. And look, there's nothing wrong with Rachel Maddow and Keith Olbermann having a show and having a liberal perspective. We have Sean Hannity, and that's perfectly fine. But when you have, and frankly, there's nothing wrong with Rachel Maddow doing commentary. I don't think there's any problem with that. What you had a problem is you have them anchoring situations where they're supposed to be playing straight journalists, and they're just not.
And it was a little strange, though, to see not only did they hate Bush and McCain, they also hated Hillary Clinton.
Right.
I mean, it was just the left sliver of the Democratic Party they were speaking to.
Equal opportunity haters, perhaps. All right, here's another topic we want to get into. Can you trust what you read on the internet? A couple of stories that got a lot of attention this week. First, internet rumors that vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin tried to ban books from the Wasilla Library, the town where she was mayor. Then United Airlines was almost sunk on Monday when an old story from 6 years ago turned up about the airline supposedly filing for bankruptcy. The airline stock plummeted from $12 to $2 before traders were alerted that the story was out of date. So how does stuff like that happen, Jane? I mean, is that the new era we're into now? No filters?
Well, I think, I was surprised that Bloomberg had a third-party provider who put this story up, and then it somehow, it's like that childhood game of gossip. By the time it got out, people thought it had come from the Wall Street Journal.
It was an accurate story.
Right.
It was just 6 years old.
Yeah, right. It was true at the time. But, the difference on the Sarah Palin thing is, I think, I've seen an email that people have been circulating from someone who knew her as a PTA president. I mean, people are trying to find something out about her. I had read that she had tried to ban books. It turns out it was not. That's not really the story.
Almost every story that we've seen about her has started as an internet rumor, and that's what's truly astonishing. I mean, the New York Times had to run a retraction about the Alaska Independence Party. I mean, we've seen over and over.
They were misled.
They all
by somebody,
started. They all came off of the internet. There was no research done.
Networks have to work hard to keep their brand protected. And Bloomberg also made a mistake on Steve Jobs being dead a couple of weeks ago. So it's just an ongoing challenge that every news portal, Fox News, and everybody else has to do to keep it accurate.
We have to take one more break. When we come back,